everybody to another session and show of Data Talks. This is Data Talks with a leader from the South, with I think our first Brazilian guest at the show, Miss Estelita Haas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Wolfgang. I'm really glad to be here. I'm a deep admirer of your work at World Data Lab, so it's a pleasure to talk to you all.
Estelita, the same goes here. And for those who don't know, Estelita is the manager for product, markets, and business intelligence of Ebanx, which I think is fair to say is a fast-growing unicorn out of Brazil.
Correct. Yes. Yes, we are based in Brazil and currently operating in 20 plus countries across emerging markets across the globe.
So, Estelita, tell us a bit about your story. The beginning of the show is always the person behind the numbers. You have been there growing the business from Ebanx for more than 7 years before you were a journalist. Tell us how that journey was, your professional journey, but also then the journey at Ebanx.
Sure. So my background is as a journalist, as you said. As a journalist, I've always been drawn to the stories that no one is telling. I think this is common to most journalists. We want to tell the stories that are overlooked, that no one is telling. So, and I actually spent most of my career as a journalist working on outlying regions of Brazil, so far from the economic centers of São Paulo, Brazilian Rio. And I think this really brought me this feeling of there are a lot of good stories out there that nobody is looking at. And when I started working with payments, this was 7 years ago, what attracted me was also this feeling that there was a story there that no one is telling. And that story is even more fascinating when you think about emerging markets, because emerging markets are also kind of overlooked. And when you look at payments are basically the invisible structure behind how people make decisions. It's the invisible business lever, So they're both kind of overlooked. And I really got passionate about payments. I started working at Ebanx 7 years ago because, Ebanx I have the luck of having this amazing company headquartered in my hometown. So I'm here talking to you guys from Curitiba, from southern Brazil, from the headquarters of Ebanx. And I've never expected really to be that passionate about payments, but at the end, I really see that payments are about people. So as I said, it's how they choose to pay, their needs, their ability to access what they want. And again, it's about people. So telling stories about people always fascinated me. And that's how I ended up working with payments, focus on emerging markets, really drawn by people and by data.
That's wonderful, and actually reminds me, Estelita, for those of you who don't know, I lived also a part of my life in Africa, and M-Pesa, which is one of the other trailblazers, coined the term changing lives, right? And you say payments is about people, and it's a wonderful connection that you just made there. You also highlighted a lot what's called the digital South now, because the digital companies are in the North, basically in the US. Tell us a bit about your vision of the digital South and how Ebanx fits in there.
Yeah, sure. So Ebanx was born here in Brazil, as I said, and currently we connect global companies with customers in emerging markets across Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And the problem that we solve is really straightforward. So a company with a card-first checkout, they cannot reach the majority of buyers in these markets simply because most of them don't have a credit card and never will. That's really about accessing these consumers. And what makes these markets really hard to serve today is that there is no single emerging market for a starter, right? You must know that. You live in Africa. This is completely different from what we have here in Brazil. And when you look at payments, what works here in Brazil is not the same that works in Mexico. What the preferred payment method in Indonesia is not the same that we have in Thailand. So each market really has developed its own way for customers to trust, to pay. And the result is really a fragmented ecosystem at every layer. So when Ebanx started working here in Brazil, this gives us this strong foundation for understanding that complexity from the inside. So back in 2012, when we started the company, we had only one payment method. So it was boleto. It was the cash payment that is widely used by Brazilians, where you have to print like a barcode, and then you scan it in an ATM or through your mobile banking or online banking. And then we look now, almost 14 years later, and we have Pix in Brazil, which is like one of the fastest growing digital payment methods in the world. It has 95% of penetration among adults, and it's an instant payment that is widely used for like everything, like since buying online, paying for your bills. So what we see here is that there is this very fast changing environment, and each transition there taught us about the same underlying dynamics. So there's changes in payment methods, the regulatory framework, languages across the markets as well. But the consumer behavior travels because these are mobile first consumers, middle class, outside the card system, often transacting for online for the first time. And that's where we started really. So understanding this complexity, nailing this complexity, and solving this through payments and gaining the consumer trust through that.
Wonderful. And again, it's indeed a big need, right? Most of the world, as we all worked on together, the emerging world is in the non-conventional markets, and there's many more south-south connections. You see it in airlines as well. Many are doing well who connect Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And I guess you are the equivalent on the payment scale. Can you just walk through the users who don't know so much about Ebanx yet? Classic use cases. You have gamers in one country that connect to somewhere else.
Yeah, sure. We see, maybe I should take a step back before that and talk a little bit about the profile of these consumers, so we can relate that to what type of categories are growing. So what we see here today is that the consumer who is buying in emerging markets is really a young, middle to lower class, mobile first, that is buy online for the first time. If you look at, what is driving e-commerce in most of these emerging markets, we're talking a lot about gaming, online education, SaaS. So these categories that are really connected to how people, to their needs, their day-to-day needs, and how they are working, traveling, having entertainment. So these are the categories that stand out in emerging markets, especially in these nascent economies in sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, driven almost entirely by young consumers. We have some interesting industries growing a lot from our perspective here at Ebanx. Social media, for example, is one of them. It's an interesting case because it's an ecosystem that is evolving surprisingly quickly in terms of business models, revenue streams. So they have been experimenting with rewarding high frequency users with micropayments. They have, B2B ads, digital ads related to their business model. But they also now moving to social commerce and also live streaming and everything. So it's a hyper dynamic business with different behavior across regions. And this makes payment strategy even more complex. We love it. And then if you look at SaaS, SaaS is a super relevant business also that's growing in emerging markets, because most of people that use these softwares are working, are solo entrepreneurs. They're working from home. They need the digital tools to develop their work. So it's a hyper growing vertical in these markets. And now we have, AI focused companies growing surprisingly fast, being global from day one, so starting from day one in multiple countries across emerging markets, Africa, Latin America, Asia. So and also demanding another level from us of payment flexibility. So I would say, that across the board, I see SaaS, gaming, social media, online education, as a very compelling business.
Can you give the viewers an indication what's next? Is this 25 markets now, or
25? I am correct. Yes.
Number? We'll remember that number.
25 and counting, because we are
Counting,
always
exactly.
looking to the next opportunity, to the next hyper growing market. So it's really exciting.
Wow. I don't know. I think during the time we worked together, I think you entered Egypt, you entered a few other Asian markets. I think, maybe you can cover the others. I don't want to anticipate things that might happen, but any other direction, if because of your footprint, is it that momentum will continue, or there's a way to consolidate or deepen in the markets you're at now?
I think it's a dual strategy here. We always want to go deep and also broad. So, of course, we want to bring the most, the maximum number of opportunities to our clients, looking at these markets that have the same consumer behavior, the same infrastructure need, the complexity for us to solve. This is really what we like to do. But also developing the depth that has also become our competitive moat. So we know what are the preferred payment methods in each country. We are directly connected to these payment players. We know what's the preferred UX, the checkout flow, and what's the data that merchants need to collect from customers to ensure that they're going to have that transaction approved, and what type of card brands they need to offer, and how to work with, the acquirers, like the payment processors at the end of the network, to ensure that that card is recognized like as a legitimate transaction, that consumer, in the countryside of Malaysia is actually buying a legitimate customer buying from a global company. So it's really about the two strategies, Wolfgang. It's about looking at the next big opportunity for our merchants according to the consumer demand that they're already seeing, the market signals that we are tracking through World Data Lab data, through our other market intelligence, and going really deep into the consumer behavior and what will really convert them at the checkout.
Estelita, and I think the viewers can sense this. This is a very innovative enterprise, and you are spearheading, the expansion of the global innovation, Estelita. Give us a sense of how you see in the payment space the next wave of innovation. What are the things you're seeing from emerging markets where most likely innovations happen, or at least in combination with some of the Silicon Valley players? Where do you see innovation happening in your space in the next few years?
That's a very exciting moment to be working with payments, when AI era and everything. But I really wanted to stress today is that we see a lot of the most interesting innovation in payments for me is happening in emerging markets. And it's moving towards two directions, basically. So the first I would say is the evolution of these instant payment rails beyond their original scope. So when you see it, when you look at Pix in Brazil, for instance, Pix launched as this instant payment method for, one-time transactions. And now we have Pix Automatico, which is Pix for recurring transactions. So we have a lot of things evolving into that as well. In India, we have UPI, which is, the actual inspiration for Pix, which is also instant payment method that's currently used by most of the population. And UPI has also evolved into a recurring rail. And now it's super interesting, which is the second point that I want to bring, second point, which is the convergence between payment methods that most of people would treat as competitors. So in India, as I was saying, today there is this embedded UPI payments within RuPay cards. So you can pay with a credit card. Actually, choose, I'm going to pay with this card, but payment method is actually transacted through UPI rails, which is super interesting. We also see, for example, when Pix emerged, there was this feeling, this is gonna kill with cards, it's a super competition, etc. But now we see like banks using the data that Pix brought, in terms of consumer behavior to give like consumer credit, for example, because most people that were using Pix not necessarily were transacting like in official financial rails. So now we have much more information about the actual consumer spending of Brazilians, and banks can use this to offer them new financial products, or to offer, as they already do, like, you can pay with Pix through your credit limit, and then I will give you, discounted rates for that, etc. So it really became an ecosystem, what we saw in India, what we saw in Brazil. And to add one more case, we have M-Pesa also in Kenya, which is like the biggest mobile money network in the world. It's a fantastic innovation where people could actually access their money through a mobile phone, even without internet connection. That was amazingly innovative back then. And today, M-Pesa is actually issuing virtual cards to their to their mobile phone holders. So you can actually have an M-Pesa issued card to buy online, for instance. So it's really like a competition. We see that there's a bigger pie than we assume. So there is really space for everyone, and each one of the payment methods is tackling a different use case, a different consumer behavior, a different consumer segment, and we see all them like really feeding from each other and evolving into this very hybrid and very exciting payment environment. So this is where I see innovation in payments today.
Wow, this is super fascinating. It's close to my heart. The cake can grow and payment is for the people. That is two big takeaways for me. Before we come to our concluding question, Estelita, I still want to build on what you just said because I found it really fascinating. So if I would organize the world in 3 blocks, right? There is the very poor people that use cash. Then there is these entry level, consumers that have it much easier now, fortunately, to enter through M-Pesa and through your service, the space. And then you have the credit card folks. But what you outlined is, well, I hope that the cash is getting eaten away, but maybe you can comment on that. But there is much more synergy that you're paving the way and could help the credit card players, that you may be in competition, but you also may help them because you're getting the consumers ready for them. Just walk us through again some of the elements you just touched on, because I think it's really fundamental to how the financial sector is operating now.
We see different use cases for each payment method, which would, make a same person use credit card for one type of purchase, cash for another type of purchase, and then instant payment or A2A transfer, which is account to account transfer for another type of purchase. We get that question a lot from customers like, how many exclusive users I would have from that payment method that are not using any other payment method? And the answer to most of these questions is like, we can't tell you, because what we see is really this payment diversity even within one consumer. So for example, I sometimes pay with boleto, which is a cash voucher, because, it's how I used to pay for, electricity or for monthly obligations. So I know that I will print the boleto and I will remember, like it's going to serve me as a reminder that by day 10, I need to pay that bill because it's every month that I pay, et cetera, et cetera. And now today we have, for example, Pix QR code within the boleto, so I can actually pay the boleto with Pix, which is another hybrid innovation that we're having. But then I will pay with boleto. I can pay with credit card for a recurring transaction, for my streaming subscription. And I can also pay through Pix for online purchases that I'm doing, that I want to get as fast as I can. And then Pix has instant confirmation and I'll pay, So of course that we see instant payments and mobile wallets also in many, many countries, including a lot of consumers from these lower and middle classes that were previously excluded from the financial system. We see these payment methods bringing a lot of consumers to the online commerce and to commerce itself. But the fascinating thing is that as people get more and more options, they will use different options according to the use case. So I will pay with installments for this purchase. I will pay with my wallet for that. I will pay with a cash voucher for that. And that's the complexity that we're trying to nail.
Fascinating, Estelita. Got me a much better, even deeper sense of the space you're operating in and its innovation. As the viewers know, the final question is always about the favorite number of my guest and the story behind it. So, Estelita, what is your favorite number?
First of all, this is a very nice question. It got me thinking a lot about, okay, what I'm going to say. I have so many numbers in my life. But, looking at what Ebanx does and what we have learned about payments and inclusion and what they can provide to people, to companies, I would say that my favorite number is 95, which is 95% of Brazilian adults currently use Pix, which is super impressive. If you look at a payment method that was launched less than 6 years ago, like 5 years ago, mainly in November 2020. So it evolved from zero to near universal adoption in a country with 200 million people. So that's very, very impressive. No payment rail in industry has achieved that. And it tells a lot that about what happens when you design from where the customer really wants, what they have and what they need. So that's super exciting. I will go with 95.
95. Wow. 95% of Brazilians who are eligible who are transacting are using Pix.
They're actually using Pix.
Using Pix.
Yes.
Wow. Well, congratulations to Pix and congratulations to the Ebanx team for being associated with this and for growing so strongly. Thank you so much, Estelita Haas, a leader in the global payment space and innovation, for talking so eloquently about payments is about people. Thank you so much for being on the show, Estelita.
Thank you, Wolfgang. It was a pleasure, and thank you so much for the opportunity.